Scientifically, several factors explain why the INFJ brain stands out, from their dominant cognitive functions to their neurological tendencies in information processing, emotional regulation, and social cognition. At the foundation of the INFJ brain wiring is their dominant function, introverted intuition. This function is not just about seeing patterns, but about integrating vast amounts of information into a coherent, forward-looking vision. Brain imaging studies of people who have an intuitive dominant personality show heightened activity in the right hemisphere, particularly in regions associated with abstract thinking and holistic processing. Instead of processing information in a linear, step-by-step fashion, INFJs often experience sudden flashes of insight where an entire conclusion crystallizes seemingly out of nowhere. This is a result of their unconscious mind running complex simulations, linking concepts across distant categories, and predicting outcomes with remarkable accuracy. The INFJ brain thrives on nonlinear connections, allowing them to foresee possibilities that most people would miss. Accompanying their introverted intuition is their auxiliary function, extrovert feeling. This function wires them for extraordinary emotional intelligence. It enables INFJs to sense the emotional states of others almost like a finely tuned radar. Neuroscientific studies on empathy suggest that such abilities are rooted in heightened activity within mirror neurons and the anterior insula, both of which play a role in perceiving and resonating with emotions. The INFJ brain doesn't just observe social cues, it embodies them, often feeling another person's joy or pain as if it were their own. This is not a superficial kind of empathy, but a biologically driven, embodied response that makes them both highly compassionate and, at times, emotionally burdened. The interplay between introverted intuition and extrovert feeling creates a fascinating duality in the INFJ mind. While their intuition constantly churns in the background, generating symbolic meanings and future possibilities, their extrovert feeling keeps them attuned to the immediate emotional landscape of others. This dual processing means that the INFJ brain is frequently running on two levels: an abstract, visionary mode that looks beyond the present moment, and a relational, emotionally attuned mode that grounds them in the present moment. Few personality types manage this balance as seamlessly, and it makes INFJs both deeply reflective and surprisingly adaptable. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Playbook today. The link is in the description of this video. Neuroscience also offers insight into why INFJs often feel mentally and emotionally different. Research into introverted intuitive types shows that their brains rely more heavily on the brain's default mode network, DMN, which is associated with self-reflection, imagination, and long-range planning. The DMN is most active when a person is engaged in internal thought rather than external tasks. For INFJs, this can result in an unusually rich inner world, where they rehearse possibilities, analyze symbolic meanings, and explore layers of existential questions. At the same time, their extrovert feeling function ensures that their imagination does not remain detached from real-world human experiences, rooting even their most abstract visions in the service of others. Another distinguishing feature of the INFJ brain is its sensitivity to overstimulation. Highly sensitive nervous systems are often linked with stronger responsiveness to sensory input and social dynamics. INFJs tend to process information more deeply, which means their brains don't simply register data. They dissect, analyze, and store it with heightened complexity. This deep processing style is supported by findings that highly intuitive and sensitive individuals often show increased activity in regions like the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, which govern decision-making and memory integration. Such brains excel at noticing patterns, but can also become quickly overwhelmed, leading to the classic INFJ need for solitude and retreat in order to recharge and filter through the flood of impressions. Memory processing in INFJs is also unique. They tend to store experiences not just as factual events, but as emotionally charged stories, blending logical sequences with symbolic layers. This is partly why INFJs often describe their memories as vivid stories that carry personal or collective meaning. Neurologically, This kind of memory integration likely arises from the close interaction between the hippocampus, which consolidates memory, and the amygdala, which assigns emotional weight. In practice, this gives INFJs the ability to recall subtle details of human behavior and to anticipate how certain dynamics will play out based on prior emotional patterns. What also sets the INFJ brain apart is its strong orientation toward meaning-making. The nature of INFJs make them rarely satisfied with surface explanations. Instead, they instinctively ask, why? Delving into the underlying causes and principles behind observable reality. This tendency aligns with neuroscientific observations that intuitive types demonstrate increased connectivity between brain regions responsible for symbolic interpretation and conceptual thinking. In effect, the INFJ brain is a meaning-constructing machine, constantly weaving together strands of reality into coherent frameworks that explain not just what is happening, but why it matters in a larger context. The INFJ brain also has a unique relationship with time. Unlike many personality types that are anchored primarily in the present or the past, INFJs are future-oriented. Their introverted intuition allows them to project forward, envisioning scenarios and preparing mentally for potential outcomes. This predictive quality has parallels with research into the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is deeply involved in simulation and anticipation. INFJs often describe experiencing a strong sense of knowing what will happen, which is less mystical than it sounds. It is the natural result of their brain's advanced pattern recognition and predictive modeling. Another intriguing scientific discovery about the INFJ brain is its tendency toward empathy-driven fatigue, sometimes referred to as empathic distress. Because INFJs' mirror neurons and social cognition networks are hyperactive, they may absorb other people's emotions so deeply that it becomes difficult to distinguish between their own inner states and external ones. Studies in affective neuroscience show that individuals with heightened empathic resonance are more prone to stress-related disorders if they do not regulate their input. This explains why INFJs often need intentional boundaries, solitude, or grounding practices to maintain mental health despite their gift of empathy. Another area the INFJ brain stands out is in the way it processes language and communication. Linguistic studies have observed that individuals who have a dominant introverted intuition tend to favor metaphorical and symbolic speech. Instead of sticking to literal, straightforward wording, INFJs often reach for imagery and analogies that capture the essence of what they mean. Neurologically, this is linked to heightened activity in the right hemisphere's temporal and parietal regions, which are associated with metaphorical reasoning and abstract linguistic processing. For INFJs, words are not just tools of communication, but vessels of deeper meaning, and their brain seems wired to extract multiple levels of interpretation from the simplest statements. The INFJ brain is also very creative. Unlike types whose creativity is expressed primarily through spontaneous brainstorming, INFJs often experience creativity as a slow, gestational process, followed by sudden breakthroughs. This aligns with the concept of incubation in creativity research, where the subconscious continues to work on a problem even when the conscious mind is focused elsewhere. Neuroimaging studies show that this process relies heavily on the interplay between the brain's executive network, which handles focused tasks, and the default mode network, which generates new connections in a diffuse state. In INFJs, this dynamic seems particularly pronounced, allowing them to produce insights that feel both inspired and deliberate, as though their creativity is guided by an invisible hand. The INFJ brain is also notable for its heightened moral orientation. Moral cognition in neuroscience is often linked to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex, areas that integrate emotional input with ethical reasoning. INFJs often report a strong inner compass, a sense of responsibility not only to people they know, but to humanity at large. This isn't simply a learned behavior. Their neural wiring seems predisposed to process moral and ethical dilemmas with greater intensity, blending empathic resonance with principle-based reasoning. This is why INFJs frequently feel compelled to advocate for justice, reform, or the alleviation of suffering, even when such efforts demand personal sacrifice. Another scientific insight that helps explain the uniqueness of the INFJ brain is their relationship with stress and resilience. Because their nervous systems are finely tuned, INFJs can be more susceptible to stress from environmental overstimulation or interpersonal conflict. Yet, paradoxically, research suggests that highly intuitive and empathic individuals also tend to exhibit stronger resilience once they find a sense of meaning in their struggles. The neurochemical basis of this lies in the reward circuitry of the brain, where dopamine release is tied not just to pleasure, but to the pursuit of purpose. For INFJs, meaning-making becomes a protective factor against burnout, transforming adversity into a catalyst for growth. The INFJ brain also demonstrates unusual synchronization between rational and emotional processing. While many people rely predominantly on one over the other, either leading with logic or emotion, INFJs often describe themselves as both deeply analytical and profoundly feeling. Functional MRI studies have shown that individuals with strong integrative thinking styles often display greater connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and limbic regions, meaning they can process emotional information without being entirely hijacked by it. This integration allows INFJs to analyze human behavior and social dynamics with both precision and compassion, producing insights that feel both logical and deeply humane. Sleep and dreaming patterns provide another fascinating window into the INFJ brain. Because their cognitive wiring leans so heavily on unconscious processing, dreams often play a significant role in their mental life. Some INFJs report unusually vivid, symbolic, and even prophetic dreams, which aligns with neuroscience findings that intuitive dominant personalities may spend more time in REM sleep, the stage associated with emotional regulation and memory integration. During REM, the brain is highly active in creating symbolic narratives that help process unresolved experiences. For INFJs, whose waking mind is already attuned to metaphor and symbolism, these dreams can feel like extensions of their intuitive insights, offering guidance or clarity in ways that appear mysterious, but are rooted in the brain's natural pattern synthesizing activity. The INFJ brain's heightened interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense and interpret signals from within the body, is also another thing that makes their brain stand out. This sensitivity is linked to the anterior insula, which plays a role in bodily self-awareness and emotional processing. Many INFJs describe feeling physical sensations in response to other people's emotions, such as heaviness in the chest when someone is grieving or a tightening in the gut when someone is anxious. While some dismiss this as metaphorical, neuroscience confirms that empathic individuals often exhibit stronger bodily resonance, where the brain mirrors emotional states with corresponding physical sensations. This embodied empathy makes their perception of others unusually visceral and difficult to ignore. Another intriguing feature of the INFJ brain is its unusual relationship with memory retrieval and future simulation. Cognitive research shows that the same neural circuits that allow us to recall the past also help us imagine the future. For INFJs, this coupling is especially strong. Their memory system does not simply store isolated events, but weaves them into interconnected frameworks of meaning. When they project forward, they draw upon these frameworks in a way that feels like a continuation of memory itself. This explains why many INFJs experience their predictions with such certainty. It is as though they are remembering something that has not yet happened. Neuroscientifically, this process relies heavily on the hippocampus and medial prefrontal cortex, regions responsible for autobiographical memory and prospection, and INFJs seem to activate these areas with heightened richness. INFJs also have a heightened capacity for sensory gating. Sensory gating is the brain's ability to filter irrelevant stimuli, so it can focus on what truly matters. Studies have shown that highly intuitive individuals often exhibit reduced sensory gating, meaning they absorb far more environmental data than average. For INFJs, this influx of unfiltered detail becomes raw material for pattern recognition and symbolic meaning-making. Their brain does not simply block out background noise. It stores fragments of information that may later surface in intuitive insights. This heightened openness to stimuli, however, can also leave them more vulnerable to overstimulation which ties back to their frequent need for quiet and controlled environments to process effectively. The INFJ brain also stands out in how it handles ambiguity and uncertainty. Many personalities are uncomfortable when faced with unresolved questions or paradoxes, but INFJs often thrive in those spaces. This tolerance for ambiguity is linked to greater activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, a region that monitors conflict and uncertainty. Instead of rushing toward premature closure, INFJs allow contradictions to coexist until their intuition synthesizes them into a deeper resolution. This gives them a unique advantage in problem solving and in perceiving truths that others might overlook because they cannot sit with the discomfort of unresolved complexity. Let's not also forget about the INFJ's brain sensitivity to oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone. Research suggests that individuals who score high on empathy and prosocial motivation may have heightened oxytocin receptor sensitivity, making them more responsive to social bonding cues. For INFJs, this heightened oxytocin sensitivity could partially explain their profound sense of connection to others and their near-instinctive drive to create harmony. It is not simply a psychological preference, but a neurochemical reality that makes relational bonds deeply significant in their lives. The INFJ brain also demonstrates a rare balance between convergent and divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is the ability to generate multiple, creative possibilities, while convergent thinking involves narrowing down options to find the single best solution. Most people excel at one or the other, but INFJs often switch between both modes seamlessly. This flexibility is supported by functional connectivity between the default mode network, which promotes creative ideation, and the executive control network, which enforces logical evaluation. This neural interplay allows INFJs to brainstorm freely, but also to distill their insights into precise, actionable conclusions, giving their ideas both breadth and depth. Dreaming and waking consciousness in INFJs also appear to have unusual overlap. Many INFJs report that their waking imagination feels dreamlike, with flashes of imagery and symbols that carry strong emotional weight. Neuroscience suggests that this may be related to heightened connectivity between the thalamus and associative areas of the cortex, which blend sensory input with imaginative interpretation. In other words, their brain blurs the boundaries between external reality and inner vision, creating a mental landscape where insights often feel as though they emerge from beyond conscious control. This dreamlike quality of thought contributes to both their creativity and their sense of otherworldliness. The way the INFJ brain processes social pain and rejection is also different. Neuroscientific studies have shown that the anterior cingulate cortex and the insular cortex light up not only when people experience physical pain, but also when they feel excluded or misunderstood. For INFJs, whose empathy networks are already hyperactive, this overlap makes interpersonal rejection or betrayal feel almost physically wounding. Their brain does not easily separate the emotional from the bodily, which is why even subtle dismissals can linger in their memory and require significant inner work to heal. This neural sensitivity helps explain why INFJs are highly cautious about the people they let into their inner world. The INFJ brain also has a heightened capacity for delayed gratification. While many people struggle with impulsivity, INFJs often display a striking ability to postpone immediate rewards in favor of long-term fulfillment. Research on self-control links this to robust activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which governs planning and inhibitory control. Because INFJs are so future-oriented, their brain seems to derive satisfaction not from instant outcomes, but from aligning their actions with a larger vision or purpose. This makes them highly disciplined when working toward goals they find meaningful, even if progress is slow or invisible to others. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Playbook today. The link is in the description of this video.